how to do a Toyota rear end. 80, early 80s pickups and 4Runners all the way up to the late 80s. I wouldn't do, I don't know, maybe early 90s. Okay, so you jack it up, rear. I jacked it up from the diff. And make sure that you have jack stands that are able to get both wheels off the ground. Make sure that it's in park, e-brakes parked, and then you want to get the drive shaft off. I would do the 4 rear bolts, and then just set that drive shaft on another jack stand if you can, like a older jack stand you're not using, just out of the way, so that way it's not drooping any farther than it needs to, and it messes up the joint. And then basically you want to start on the each tires on the back, or each tire, yeah. And so you take off all the lugs. Actually, I apologize. You want to do the at least start the lugs before you jack it up, and then continue them after the entire rear end is jacked up and jack standed, because that way you actually get a torque that you need. You're not just spinning the tire. So yeah, and then you finish with that and get the tires off. Once the tires are off, and now that drive shaft is off, the 4 bolts, you're going to need 2 14mm wrenches on that, the drive shaft. Once that's off, and because only reason I would recommend that you put that in the e-brake on is because that way the drive shaft doesn't move, and you can wrench on those bolts all you want, and it's catching all the gears and everything like that. So once the drive shaft's off, you can take that e-brake off and make sure that you chock the front tires when you do, and you're not free rolling, because it'll come off these jack stands. So chock the front tires when you do that, and then once the e-brake's off, you can dismount these brackets, these things. There's a pin with a cotter pin that goes through, and then you just remove the cotter pin, and then you remove that pin from this. There's a washer that should be right there where the cotter pin is, so it doesn't mess up. And then you do that on both sides, and then on both sides you do the brake line. And the brake line, sorry, this is the same thing I did just a second ago. Brake line you want to use, where is it? Oh no, oh, it's somewhere in here. There we go. You want to use a brake line wrench. Mine was the 10mm, but it comes in 10 and 12, and I'm sure other sizes, but it grabs around it. It's where you just slip it over the line and grabs around it mostly, and you're doing damage. So and if you even see the brake line twist at all, like if you don't feel like you're wrenching too hard and it's not going to come off, stop. Use PB Blaster WD-40 to get it off, because it's a lot easier to get this nut off than it is to replace the line. Obviously this line's not that far, but you don't want to like bending, because you're going to need a tube bender, and you can sit there and bend it around a pipe that size, but whatever, you don't want to do that. And anyway, so once those two things are off, you got these 4 bolts that are right on the back side right there. Oh wait, no, before you get to these 4 bolts, there's that hub on the lug nuts that can come off because the e-brake is not attached anymore. So you just take that little hub off the thing, off those lugs, and you can see all your internal e-brake, or rear braking components. And if anything doesn't seem right or seems out of place, and you don't like anything the way it looks, or something's damaged, replace it. And it's very cheap. You just got to buy the tools and whatnot. That's a whole different subject. But yeah, just replace it. It's a lot easier. The drum brakes aren't that hard, but I don't like dealing with them. Disc brakes are way easier. Anyway, one step I completely forgot out of this entire video. Once the rear drive shaft's off and everything's lifted, drain the fluid. Drain the diff fluid, so that way everything comes out. Because when you're pulling out the axles, you don't want that suction. And that would be it. So I'll edit that to include it. Off, you can get to these 4 bolts, and once you remove those 4 bolts, the axle just comes out. You just grab the rest of the whole braking assembly, and just remove it, and it just comes straight out. And you grab hold of it because the bearing is on the side that you're grabbing, and so it'll actually rotate in your hand, and it's pretty heavy, so you don't want it rotating or whatnot, and you drop it. Anyway, yeah, so you do that for both sides. You get both axles out, and once both the axles are out, the diff can come out. And I would recommend, that's the reason why I said jack stands, because you can put this on jack stands and then take the jack and use it to help you wiggle that diff out. My diff on my old pickup didn't have all the studs that this one has. Mine only had 2 on either side. This one has studs on all of them, which is a very good thing. You want to have, if you can get that, get the studs on all sides, because it just makes it that much easier. You can grab down better and you won't have leaks. So yeah, that's basically it. Once that diff comes out, I kind of wheeled it out and then lowered it, because it's pretty heavy. It's about 50 pounds. It's an 8-inch diff, by the way. It's both of them. This is solid axle. This is an 84 4Runner, carbed. So it's a solid axle up front, and both of them are 8-inch. Yeah, so that's the thing is that, and then I kept all the washers with all the nuts, and it's going to go on the reverse, basically. I'm going to clean it was leaking from the rear end, so I'm going to clean off the surface, regasket it, and stick the diff back on it, and retorque it back down to where it's supposed to be torqued, and that's where I'm going to leave it at, and hopefully it solves the problem. And then you just obviously do the reverse. You put the axles back in. When you're going back in, make sure that they might be lubed up. If anything, put some oil on them or whatnot, gear lube. Because I mean, obviously that's what the housing calls for when you put it in. That way, because you're gonna have to twist it in. Just twist it, wiggle it very slightly, very lightly, so that you're not eating up any teeth. And once they're in on both sides, and then you just do the reverse, the 4 bolts, the freaking brake line, and then this, and then your tires, and then you're done, man. So I hope you enjoyed this. This is pretty much it. I'm sorry if I'm not, you want to see it done, but this is pretty much this. So there's really no point in doing it all and wasting your time. I can just explain it. So exactly. So you want to do the reverse. Remember, when you get back to putting the axles in and the diff in, you get to the drive line, put it back, the e-brake back in, so that way you can torque down on those bolts. You can take the e-brake off anytime you want to rotate the drive shaft to get to any bolts that you're not using, as long as the tires are not on. So when you know what I mean, as long as the tires are not on hitting the ground, because well, even then the tires are on, so that way it's going to add weight. So that's what I would do. When you get to the drive shaft, make sure the e-brake is on. That way you can torque them down and it grabs everything. I mean, if your brakes are good, it should grab. So that's basically. Okay, so the previous owner let this sit for 10 years and it went to crap on me and everything started failing. But when I took off this rear member and looked at it and inspected it, it is pretty dang good. I'm actually glad that he did that, because he's supposed to be able to move, because when they do, they move perfectly and flawlessly. And look at all the teeth. All the teeth are perfect. So it seems like it's pretty good at moving. Very good. The teeth all seem to be there, and I'm very impressed with it. So